Welcome to Bringing Back the Wild. In each episode, Mike Arnold explores how science, tradition, and hands-on conservation come together to protect the wild places and wildlife we care about. Your host, Mike Arnold, is a professor of genetics, a lifelong hunter, and a conservation biologist. As a genetics professor who spends as much time in the woods as he does in the lab, Mike studies wildlife, has a passion for hunting, and cares deeply about conservation. On this podcast, Mike dives into the science and stories behind bringing wildlife species back and keeping wild places wild. Sponsors of Bringing Back the Wild are Dallas Safari Club, conserving wildlife, engaging the public, and ensuring the future. Lifeform Taxidermy, guardian of the hunter's dreams. Zambezi Delta Safaris, protecting wildlife, empowering communities, defining adventure. Royal Outfitters UK, tradition in the field and excellence in the hunt. Choctaw Hunting Lodge, native land, exceptional wildlife, and unforgettable hunts. Johann van Zoy, 8 generations, one relentless pursuit of perfection in building firearms. Now, here's your host, Mike Arnold.
Welcome to Bringing Back the Wild. We have a very special friend of both Francis and mine, actually, Seth Swerczek from Hornady. You know what, Seth? You caught me when you got on. I was trying to figure out what your actual title is at Hornady. Can you tell our listeners that?
Yeah, so the official title is Marketing Communications Manager, and Hornady has, I think, the reputation of being this very large corporate company, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Hornady is actually a really small family-owned company, and so although the official title is Marketing Communications Manager, I also do all of the PR for the outdoor journalism at large. I also help with the essentially the PR for a couple of some TV shows and YouTube, and then I also do a business development role with our Hornady Ford-Off ballistics program. And then lastly, I'm the liaison between the outdoor industry at large and Hornady Manufacturing as it relates to new cartridge releases. So we can get into my kind of career at some point about here at Hornady. But when I moved over to marketing, I had the technical background. And then now in the marketing role, I have the industry relationships. So I've been the natural fit to get Hornady's new cartridges put in all these different factory-built rifles. So communications manager is the official title.
By the way, folks, what I call Seth is the guy I bug relentlessly about everything to do with Hornady. Seth, when did you get into shooting and hunting?
By force and by accident, if you will. And it wasn't like actual force. It was just that's what people did where I grew up. And so that's what I wanted to do as well. I grew up in central Nebraska, right on the Cedar River, a very beautiful place. And you're on the far eastern range of mule deer, beautiful whitetail country, upland game, all kinds of predators like coyotes, obviously. And at the time, great fur harvest stuff. So trapping raccoons and doing that kind of thing. And from a very young age, that's what my dad did. And so I was one of 3 kids and the only son, and I just went with dad. And so when dad was going to check his trap line, little fathead Seth went along. And I remember being very young. I couldn't put an age on it. I want to say kindergarten, so maybe 5 or 6 years old. And there was a raccoon in a live trap. And back then, raccoons, if it was a big furred up boar, you get $20, $25. That was pretty good money in 1994. And my father had gotten a new Ruger Mark IV Target pistol, stainless. It was very beautiful. Anyways, he let me shoot that coon. And I don't know, that was probably one of the first animals that I shot. And I remembered how electric that felt. And then just being out in the woods with my dad was great. So between prairie dogs and coyotes and shooting pheasants, and dad was a hunter, of course, but he was also a reloader. So that same 5 or 6 year old Seth was in the basement with dad pulling the handle to size brass. And dad was not just a hunter and reloader, but he was a shooter. He enjoyed going out into what we called the meadow, which is 3 hay fields, 3 like 80-acre hay fields together. And so go out to the meadow, set up some targets, and then just shoot his rifle. For me, it was just something that I was born into, and I can't imagine life any other way. I wasn't ever forced into it. It was just, that's what Dad's doing, so that's what I'm doing. And I caught on pretty early, and that's something that was just a part of my life starting as early as I can remember.
What
Yeah.
was your first hunting trip, per se, that you actually harvested an animal on, and what was the animal?
I often joke about being the first kid in a small town with the North American Songbird Slam with the BB gun at a very young age. But in Nebraska at the time, I think you had to be 11 or 12. I think it was 12. So you had to be 12 years old to harvest a deer. And like I said, we lived in just gorgeous deer country right on the river bottom. And then my dad, who was a carpenter, among a few other things, through his carpentry work, would gain access to a lot of places to hunt. He used that as leverage. And so we just had run of the county to hunt. So at 12 years old, that was my first, I get to go on a big game hunt. And I've been on these hunts with my dad and my uncles, and Dad's part of a huge family, so a lot of people around hunting. When I was 11, Dad bought me a Ruger M77 and 257 Roberts. I spent all year shooting it. And in November, as 12-year-old Seth, I got to go on my first deer hunt down on the river bottom and shot would have been like a 90-inch 4x4, but it was broke off on one side. And I was just ecstatic. So that was my first big game hunt. And right around that time as well, started getting into pheasants. At the time where I grew up, pheasants were like mosquitoes, so we did a lot of pheasant hunting as well. But that whitetail deer was my first big game hunt.
Tell us a little bit how did you develop in your hunting? Was it mostly upland that you did every year, or do you consider yourself a deer hunter?
Growing up, it was primarily deer. Of course, we'd pheasant hunt. We had some prairie chickens, quail, doves. We would do that, and that was always fun. And we would do that every year, several times a year. But the focus was deer hunting. You look forward to, Nebraska's only got a 9-day rifle season, but you grow up, at least in our area, you grow up dreaming about those 9 days. And that's something that I really took serious. We live in an absolute sanctuary for waterfowl, but I would never got into goose hunting or anything like that, although we were right in a perfect spot to do it. So that was never our thing. But deer hunting was the focus, and it was easy to focus on because they were so plentiful at the time, and we were in the heart of it. They were everywhere, and so it was easy to focus on it because right there. And you drive to school, I had a 9-mile drive to school, and you'd see deer every day. And the primary focus, not just within our household, but really the area we were in, was deer hunting.
Did you process your own deer?
Oh, yeah. We did a little bit of both, truthfully. My dad, like I said, was part of a really big family, and so as a youngster, before I was old enough to hunt, man, there'd be 10 to 15 people with a deer tag hunting out of what I would call camp, which was just my grandparents' house. And so my dad and a couple others would process everybody's deer all together. So it was a very busy 2 weeks there. So we would do that. And then there was a couple lockers locally that would make some really tasty meat treats that we couldn't do. But as far as the grind, the burger, the chops, the roast, we'd always do that ourselves. But snack sticks and things like that we'd go elsewhere.
Conservation requires defending the ability to hunt. Dallas Safari Club and the Dallas Safari Club Political Action Committee stand on the front lines when bad legislation threatens wildlife management and habitat conservation. They actively defeat proposals that would cripple hunting and damage conservation funding worldwide. DSC equips its members with action alerts, accurate information, and real opportunities to serve as ambassadors for sustainable use in their own communities. This isn't about politics. It's about protecting wildlife through proven, science-based management. Without hunters, conservation loses its strongest advocates and most reliable funding source. If you want an organization that fights for wildlife habitat and your hunting rights, Dallas Safari Club delivers. Join the mission at biggame.org. So now walk us through, I believe you've been in the service.
Yeah. Yep. Just again, coming from that very large family, large extended family that I grew up around. Dad was one of 17, and almost all of the men in that family, it really ended with him. Dad was not in the service. Above him, all of his brothers and sisters north of him, a lot of them were in the military. On my mom's side, Grandpa was a World War II veteran. There was some Vietnam vets in there, of course, and Korean War veterans. And so there was just a thing. That's just what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And being, small town country kid, that's what you went to high school and had an opportunity to pursue some athletic endeavors at the college level. Did that for a year and was planning on just joining the Marine Corps. And then I learned, I didn't know at the time, that the Marine Corps had a reserve program. So I could go to college, pursue those athletics that I wanted, and also serve in the Marine Corps. So that's what I did. I joined the Marine Corps Reserve right after my freshman year of college. And then when I finished all that initial training, came back, went right back to school, went right back to playing ball, and then was in the Marine Corps for a total of 8 years, did one deployment to Afghanistan in 2011. And then ultimately got out after the 8 years of service in 2015.
And so how did that affect, or did it affect, your interest in shooting? That were you exposed to other kinds of firearms that you wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise?
Absolutely. We grew up, you had bolt action rifles. I had a over and under shotgun, and I had bolt action rifles. It's just what you had. We had one semi-automatic in the house, and that was a Ruger 1022 with 18 bajillion rounds on it. And so obviously going to the Marine Corps, you get exposed to, at the time, the M16A4 and the newly kind of issued M16M4. And yeah, you get familiarity with those, and it was certainly a cool platform that I had never held even, but to learn how to shoot. And then obviously the Marine Corps being such a focus on marksmanship, you learn fundamentals of marksmanship and you apply those fundamentals to a really, I don't know the right words for that, but the M16 or just the AR platform as a whole, as a government issued item, horrible triggers. We're talking 5 to 8 pound trigger pulls, and there's grit all through that travel. So you learn to apply those fundamentals to a system that is not precise or consistent. And man, when I got home and went back to a bolt action rifle with a magnified optic, you apply those same fundamentals, and it corrected so many problems with me as a shooter. Accuracy got better, range potential certainly increased, confidence level behind the rifle changed dramatically. And I had shot my whole life. The Marine Corps teaches you how to shoot, and those fundamentals, the trigger manipulation, sight alignment, sight picture, follow through, breathing control, all of those things definitely shaped it. And learning, you get the Beretta service pistol, which again is not the nicest pistol in the world. And if you can learn how to shoot on an M16 and a Beretta M9, man, you can really transfer those fundamentals to now any rifle or handgun system out there, and they transfer. And so it really helped me in that regard.
So now let's transition. When you came back, or when you got out of the Marines, was that when you joined Hornady?
No, actually, I came home from deployment in 2012 and stayed on active duty for a little while there. I had one more semester, just a single semester of college to get my 4-year degree. And then I had to get a job. And I identified at the time that I wanted to work in the outdoor space. I didn't know where. I knew what my passions were. I love to hunt and shoot. I did not fancy myself an expert or remotely qualified to work in the outdoor space, but I thought, man, that if I have to get a big kid job, that's what I want to do. And I had this semester from September to December essentially to figure out and start applying for jobs. And I applied for quite a few, and it was in December, there was a job opening. So this would be now in late 2012 at Hornady for a technical representative. And at Hornady, what that means is largely it's customer service, but it's a little deeper than that. It's a product expert. So when you call Hornady, we've got 10 guys right now that if you need to talk to somebody that is a product expert, they know our products inside and out, the entire suite of products that we manufacture, and then all of them hunt, all of them shoot, all of them reload. Almost all of them shoot competitively, and they all have their different strengths, but they know bench rest, F-class, USPSA, 3-gun, PRS. They are legit product experts, and I was certainly not qualified for that at the time, but I applied for it nonetheless and graduated in December, ended up majoring in business and minoring in history with a coaching endorsement. And then I had some time, right? So I graduated in December. I had not heard back from any of these outdoor industries that I wanted to work in. I applied for this job at Hornady and I heard nothing back. In February, this was in December, fast forward a couple months, in February, there was a job posting for a bullet press operator. And now it was through a staffing agency. So it wasn't actually working for Hornady, and it said Hornady nowhere in the advertisement. You worked for the staffing agency making bullets. So I said, there's only one bullet manufacturer in Grand Island, Nebraska. So I know who that's for. So I applied for that job through the staffing agency. And when they called me, I explained, hey, thanks for calling me. I'm not interested in being a bullet press operator. Do you know the hiring manager or the HR director at Hornady? Because the job posting is still up and I haven't heard anything. And her name was Janine, and she now works for Hornady, oddly enough. And she said, you know what? I know the HR director. Let me talk to her. And I went away to do some training with the Marine Corps in 29 Palms, California. And I was on that base and I got a phone call from a random 308 area code, and it was the HR director at Hornady. And I did a phone interview, helicopters in the background, did a phone interview there. I came home from that training evolution, went in for an in-person interview it was a Friday when I came in. I started Monday, March 4th. As a technical representative. And then the training, so this was now 2013, the training they put you through is quite extensive and much needed, obviously. But I started March 4th, 2013.
So talk to us about your evolution then within and passage within Hornady. We're actually going to get to your employers. I sat in a reloading shop when I was like 5 years old seeing Hornady products, and I'm old, so that was a long time ago. So anyway, we'll get to them. But so how did you develop then to get where you are now?
So a lot of being a technical representative is you have to be the product expert. So what Hornady does when you come into that role is they devote a lot of time to train you. And the first place I started was bullets. And I think that's where they start everybody that's going into our technical field, because that's what Hornady is primarily, is a bullet company. So you go on the floor and you learn from an operator how to make bullets. You work with them. You come in every day and you report to them and you work with them. And this is a several week process, and you learn how to make bullets, different kinds of bullets. And you try to learn everything you can, everything they have to teach you about making bullets. And that's little tiny varmint bullets to the dangerous game stuff. You try to learn everything. And then your next evolution for me was cartridge cases. From cartridge cases, I went to ammo. From ammo, I went to reloading tools, and then you go down and work in the ballistics lab as well. And so you just try to be a sponge, and it's a month and a half, 2 months before you actually get to take your first phone call or answer your first email. And then from there, it was about 18 months where I wasn't feeling like I drank from a fire hose. So for the first year and a half or so is really intense. And then the company really encourages you to be involved. That's hunting, that's competitive shooting, that they really help you. They give you a lot of resources to go shoot matches or to learn how to reload or to get reloading equipment or to go on hunts and stuff. Really supportive in that role. So I did that for maybe 3.5 years as a technical representative. At about year 3.5 or so, I was promoted to the assistant manager of that technical services division. And in that time, it had been my passion to shoot stuff far away. I love shooting long-range targets. I love shooting long range as a whole. And the world of precision rifle sports as we know it was really starting to build starting in 2011, 12, 13 timeframe. So I was there at the beginning, if you will. Certainly here at Hornady, there's only me and a couple other employees that were really into that. And then within that, I loved the study of external ballistics. And not just using ballistic calculators to hit the target. I love to read and understand the whole external ballistics thing and Magnus effect and all of these different complex topics. I was really passionate about that. I was passionate about internal ballistics as well. And so in 2016, late 16, our senior ballistic scientist, Dave Emery, retired from Hornady. Now, Dave had such an illustrious career. I won't bore you with it, but it's 17 HMR, 204 Ruger, 6.5 Creedmoor, VMAX bullets, Lever Evolution. I mean, like the list is on and on of all the projects that changed the world as we know it for shooters came from Dave Emery. He retired, and his understudy now became our senior ballistician. And him and I are great friends, similar passions, and we approach problems slightly differently, which is nice. And he needed an understudy basically because Dave left a huge hole and the company gambled on me, but I then moved from technical service over to ballistic engineering. That was in early 2017. So from 2017 until 2020 or 2021, I worked on new product development. I got to work on projects like 6.5 PRC, 7 PRC, A-tip match bullets, CX bullets, the ARC family of cartridges, just a bunch of new cool stuff, and learned a lot of things along the way. And then the former PR guy, the former communications manager, he left Hornady looking for greener pastures, and they let him leave for about 2 months before they posted to fill his job. And Jason Hornady recommended that I apply for it. I had no intention of doing it otherwise. I had the coolest job in the world. But there's some top-down pressure that maybe I should seriously consider it. And yeah, I believe it was 2020, I moved over to marketing as a communications manager, and that's where you find me now.
One of the things I want to mention to the listeners was my son-in-law, daughter, grandson, Francis, and myself listened to Seth describing at DSC. He was doing a seminar and we were eating lunch. And I listened to you talk to people about the fact that there's been a revolution for all of us shooters, hunters in long range shooting. In terms of the elevation versus windage, I loved listening to you talk about this, that elevation has been solved for us in a lot of ways by the optics, by our computers, by our kestrels. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for the long range shooting equation was just a math problem. And there's really only 4 things that we're accounting for. The environment plays a huge role in all of these. So that's a 5th one. But the things we're worried about are bullets are dropping due to gravity. They're deflecting in the wind. There's a phenomenon, if you will, called aerodynamic jump, which is the vertical shift that a bullet experiences based on a left or right crosswind, and then spin drift, which most people have heard of. But to get to the first 2, bullet drop and windage, like you said, Mike, bullet drop that's an easy math problem. It's very easy. It's very predictable. Bullets drop at 9.8 meters per second squared. So that's pretty easy. You got a 1 second time of flight. If you got a 2 second time of flight, you just keep adding on 9.8 meters per second squared. So bullet drop is really easy with a simple calculator. Hornady FortOff is free. You can download that on your phone. There are several other ballistic programs out there that'll give you good bullet drop numbers. So that one's easy. The tough one is wind deflection because it's the hardest to read and it's the most variable. So wind deflection, as far as long-range shooting goes, we rarely miss targets due to bullet drop anymore. We almost always miss targets because of wind deflection. And so as a long-range shooter, as a student of the gun, as a rifleman, wind is one of the most fickle things, and it is a perishable skill. When you get really good at reading wind, if you hang it up for a little bit, you'll still be better than average, but you will lose some of that. So from a wind deflection standpoint, wind deflection is caused by bullet drag. Some people think that the wind is physically blowing against the bullet and that's what's causing it to drift. And there may be a very small portion of that, but the large reality is the bullet, the way it orientates when the wind hits it, causes drag to drag it the other direction with the wind flow. So what I always recommend to everybody, if you are a hunter, even out to what I call traditional ranges, which is somewhere between 300 and 400 yards, the wind is blowing hard enough. You have to account for it. And wind meters now are really cheap. And the best thing you can do if you're going to get into long range shooting, when you're out walking the dog, when you're outside doing chores, when you're out on the range, feel the wind, look at the vegetation downrange, make a guess on what that wind speed is, and then check it with your wind meter. And you can start to calibrate yourself to that wind meter of what the wind deflection actually is. But best thing you can do, download a free ballistic calculator like the Hornady 4-off. Shoot low drag bullets if you're going to shoot long range, because low drag means flatter trajectory and less wind drift, and then practice reading the wind.
So tell us about what's going on at Hornady that's exciting for us hunters and shooters.
As hunters, we're always trying to get closer, and that's always the goal. And what you've seen from Hornady is these kind of modern advancements in cartridges and bullets that are just simply more efficient. So although they may be useful at extended range, that just means they work that much better the closer you get. And look at like our ELDX bullets, and then also our line of cartridges, the 300, the 7, and the 6.5 PRC, the full line of Creedmoor cartridges, the ARC cartridges. That's really exciting to be a part of. And then another thing I think that's parallel to that is monolithic bullets, solid copper expanding bullets. Back in the 80s, when Randy Brooks first had the idea of what would become the Barnes X bullet, he was looking for added terminal performance and more weight retention. And they were the first to market with that. And now everybody's got one. And Hornady has invested in a large amount of resources in our copper expanding bullet, the CX bullet. And in the 90s and 2000s, you saw this push towards bonded bullets. And even Hornady had their own line of inner bond bullets. And the problem they were trying to solve was weight retention. They wanted the bullets to hold more mass together. And bonded bullets did that, but it also brought up some maybe not so great problems as well. And with these new copper expanding bullets, you get more weight retention than a bonded bullet. They're easier to manufacture. They shoot super well. So for the modern hunter, man, these CX bullets, they do a wonder on animals. They're accurate. They hit hard. And you're not limited by range as much as you used to, because we're designing them with these really long, efficient shapes. So that's what's going on. There's always R&D. That's one of the cornerstones of Hornady, is the innovation. And so we've got a room full of ballistic engineers that are always innovating. But for what I can talk about right now, I think the line of more efficient cartridges and bullets, and then how copper bullets have become more of a mainstay for the average hunter. I'm sure there will be some new innovations, certainly on the bullet side, because that, again, of everything we do, bullets. Internally, there is a saying, it's painted on walls, there's stickers made, the bullets make the H. And what that means is Hornady is a bullet first company. We do bullets. And so I'm confident you'll see more innovation in bullets. From a cartridge standpoint, you might see some more. I don't know what they're working on right now, but the cartridge thing, we only want to introduce a new cartridge if there is a legitimate need. And if you look at the PRC line, for example, is there a legitimate need for, let's talk 7 PRC. I use this analogy a lot. You have the 7 mag and you have a few others. The 7 mag's been around for a long time, right? We're talking 65 years. So the reason the 7 PRC was what I'm going to call needed was that the demands of the hunter exceeded what that legacy cartridge could provide. Now, you and I both know this. If you take a 7 mag and you order a custom chamber reamer that's got a really good throat design. Okay, I got this custom reamer that's set up that chamber for accuracy. Okay, I want to shoot the 175 or 80 grain bullets. So I need a faster twist rate than Sammy. So I get this 8 twist barrel. Okay, get the gunsmith to spool this up, chamber my custom reamer in this custom barrel. All right, now to get the bullets I want to shoot in the cartridge, I got a hand load for it. Okay, I can do that. Now, 7 mag's a little weird because it's a Magnum, but the SAMI pressure limit is only 59,000 pounds, okay? Yep. So I'm running this a little hotter than SAMI Max, and it's a little longer than the SAMI length. But look at all this performance I got. This is amazing. I could shoot an elk at 800 yards if I wanted to, and I can ring steel at a mile. Okay, that's what the modern hunters are starting to demand. Not everybody's going to go through all of that to get that level of performance. So the 7 PRC just gives you that performance in a factory rifle with factory ammo. So that's why we introduce cartridges like that, is to get what used to take custom builds and custom hand loads to obtain, let's give the average guy the factory options to do this. And where there are holes in the market, sure, we'll certainly come up with cartridges to fill them. I don't foresee any in the very near future. It seems like it's pretty well covered up. There's new case technology that everyone's talking about with these high pressure and steel cases. I don't know what that future looks like, but you got the Federal 7mm backcountry out. Federal's obviously working on others as well with that case technology. So maybe that's where the future is. Until then, though, I don't think you'll really see anything from the cartridge standpoint from Hornady.
What else would you like to tell us about Hornady before I sign off? Because I know you got to get back to work.
Yeah. I just feel, again, I mentioned it at the beginning of the recording, Mike, but we just got through trade show season. And you know how this year, I saw you in passing a couple times. You were pretty ragged. These shows are big, they're busy, but we get a ton of interaction with the actual end user of the product. And there's still this misunderstanding that Hornady is this giant company and it's very corporate and structured. And again, that's not how it is. We are in the middle of Nebraska, in the middle of nowhere, and this is what we do, right?
Yes.
We are all hunters. We are all shooters. We're all competitors here. And so we're designing products for ourselves. And so we want that customer feedback. Don't ever think that you can't interact with Hornady if you've got suggestions. There's a lot of products in our lineup that have come from conversations at trade shows or customer recommendations. So you can always reach out to us. Again, because we're small and we care, and if it's meritable, we will listen. And so if you want to talk to, say, one of our technicians, 800-338-3220 is our hotline. Then press extension 3, and you'll go to technical service. That's, again, one of the 10 guys up there that are passionate about this. One other thing that I didn't appreciate when I was younger would matter. I didn't think this would be a thing, but we're a family-owned company. Okay, that means something. But Hornady is American owned. Think about that. I never would have guessed that would be significant, but there are plenty of big ammo companies in the United States that are owned by foreign investors, and that's not the case here. We're family owned, privately owned, and locally owned. And again, that's something that just as the consumer level, talking about our fathers, my dad, he reloaded Hornady products because that was the hometown team. If I wanted to go, he didn't, but he could drive. It was 65 miles. He could drive to Hornady should he be so inclined. It was the hometown team. And when you zoom out to the United States, Hornady is a hometown team, and it's odd that there's getting to be fewer of those. So I just would like to leave the listener with that.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Seth. Thank you for taking the time and being with my listeners, myself. It was wonderful.
Of course. Thank you, Mike.
Bye-bye. If this conversation meant something to you, please follow Bringing Back the Wild so you don't miss future episodes. Consider leaving a rating or sharing the podcast with someone who cares about wildlife and conservation. You can also visit MikeArnoldOutdoors.com for stories from the field, conservation-driven articles, and information about my books. I'm Mike Arnold. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.